Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm Ryan Wormeli, joined on this Friday morning by Derek Brown and by Pat Fitzmaurice. We're having some fun already. Fellas, we are talking our key questions for Week 7 here. Quick reminder for everyone, all of our weekly consensus rankings and tiers can be found at fantasypros.com/rankings. Also, a quick reminder that if you're juggling multiple fantasy football teams and feeling overwhelmed, Fantasy Pros will help you simplify things. With Fantasy Pros Multi-League Assistant, you can see the latest news, notes, and rankings for every single player across all your teams. It's all in one spot, making your path to victory clearer and easier. Dive in and let us help you dominate all your leagues with the Multi-League Assistant at fantasypros.com/myplaybook or on the Fantasy Football My Playbook app. Fellas, before we jump in to the questions this week, I do want to hit a little bit on Thursday Night Football. And my real question that I wanted to discuss here, it was 33-10 Broncos victory over the Saints in New Orleans. Was this Javonte Williams being good, or was this the Saints' run defense being bad? Williams, obviously 14 carries, 88 yards, 2 touchdowns. He also had 3 catches for 23 yards. A breakout game for him within the 2024 season. Was this Javonte good or Saints bad, Fitz?
A little bit of both. He ran hard, broke some tackles. The Saints defense was not good. I mean, it looked like they were quitting almost on that side of the ball on national television last night. So, yeah, I mean, like what we were worried about if we, the Javonte investors, which I certainly am, the rumors that maybe Audric Estime would have more of a role this week. And we heard Sean Payton sort of talk about wanting to get Estime more involved. I think Estime wound up playing 5 snaps. So that kind of wound up not being a thing. And I believe next week the Broncos get the Panthers. So we can feel pretty good with rolling with Javonte another week. But then the week after that, Worm, I think it's your Ravens who, as you pointed out on a different show this week, haven't given up 50 rushing yards to any running back this week. So, it might be a pretty good 2-week run for Javonte before we get the hangover in week 9.
What was your takeaway, D-Bro?
Look, Javonte looked good, but also this was a function of the Saints defense. I wrote it up in the primer. I said he's probably headed towards his best output of the season, and that's exactly what we saw. But this Saints team is just a dumpster fire, man. Like, doesn't it feel so far in the rear view of the first 2 weeks of the season, how the Saints looked? And I'm not going to just pile on top of it and say, and I'll get to it. But, I mean, Rashid Shaheed is out. Chris Olave is out. Paulson Adebo, but, shout out to him. Thoughts are with him in the recovery. He goes out. They're hurt, battered, beaten. The offensive line is a shell of itself. But the other part of this is that this team has quit on Dennis Allen, and he needs to go. He should have never come back this season. I hate that he did, but he needs to go. Bye, gone. Clint Kubiak, run the team, pick somebody to be the interim head coach, burn it all down to the freaking studs. I'm ready for Saints to rebuild and just start over.
I think that's completely justified. I don't disagree with anything you just said. On the Saints side of things, is the quarterback situation so bad that outside of Kamara, we're just not starting any Saints until Derek Carr is back? D-Bro?
No, I mean, I think with Shaheed going out, can we also say Chris Olave, and because he didn't play in this game, he's a player that people need to be trading for. Like, he is going to hoover targets. Like, what's he going to get weekly, guys? 27-30% target share?
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot.
Yeah, I thought when you started that sentence, I thought when you said 27, you were going to say targets, not target share. That's how many I expect him to get. Yeah, Fitz. I mean, I guess, Olave, are you interested in trading for him?
Yeah. I mean, well, not really, because I've already got him on pretty much all my rosters. So, it's probably going to work out if Carr comes back. Yeah, I think we're looking at big weekly target shares.
All right, let's jump into our questions for the slate. As always, we're going through our 10 biggest questions for this is now week 7. We are into that second trimester of the 2024 season. Let's start with Bengals-Browns. With Amari Cooper gone and Nick Chubb returning, who are the Browns worth starting in this one, Fitz?
It's not a long list, Worm. In fact, I don't know if there's a list at all. The Browns haven't scored 20 points in a game this year. They're averaging 240 yards of offense per game. Obviously, I don't want to start Deshaun Watson. I don't want to start Nick Chubb because I don't know what his role is going to be if they've got him on a snap count or a carry limit this week. So I want a show me game out of Nick Chubb before I roll him into a lineup. Don't want to start Deonta Foreman. Don't really want to start David Njoku because he's just never had good chemistry with Deshaun Watson. I mean, I guess he's playable if you're sort of in the land of tight end 2 sadness. Don't really want to start Jerry Jeudy because I don't think he's good. Like, I don't know how. I know it stands to reason that he should benefit from the departure of Amari Cooper. I just don't know if Jeudy is good enough to capitalize.
Dero, what do you think? Do you have maybe a little more optimism here than Fitz does?
I have a little more optimism, but it's not much. There's only one Cleveland Brown that's worth starting this week, and it's David Njoku. That's it. I mean, my update of the primer will reflect this too. You do not need to play anybody from the Cleveland Browns backfield. I get you can run on the Bengals. This could be 3 to 4 running backs this week getting carries if Jerome Ford plays. If not, it could be 3 running backs. It could be Pierre Strong, Nick Chubb, Deontay Foreman, all of them getting between 5 and 8 carries, and nobody is worth playing. But back to David Njoku, I mean, he should be a PPR machine. Look at it, as bad as Deshaun Watson is, David Njoku has like a sub-5 ADOT, so I'm only asking for Deshaun Watson to just basically handle elongated handoffs to David Njoku. And in that sense, Njoku can be good this week. I mean, last week he had a 30% target share, so if he can replicate that this week in a good matchup, since he has been allowing a good amount of production, 2 tight ends, 10th most receiving yards, and 5th most fantasy points per game. So Njoku, I think, is very worth starting this week, but the rest of Cleveland, count me out. Nope, not worth. No.
If there is a receiver, is it Jeudy or?
I mean, when have we felt good about starting Amari Cooper at any time this season? So do we feel any better about a lesser talent than Jerry Jeudy? I don't. No.
All right. Let's go to a much more fun game. Seahawks at Falcons. Lots of players in this one are ranked very close to each other. So I wanted to play a little head-to-head with you guys and ask who you prefer at a couple of different positions. Kind of similar to what we do on the Thursday show, actually. Debra, I'll start with you. Who do you prefer at quarterback, Geno Smith or Kirk Cousins?
Kirk O'Chains, baby. Running a top 5 pace and passing rate clip. Seattle has been a bottom 3 pass defense over the last few weeks. Basically, their last 3 games, they're horrible. They're wretched. It's Kirk Cousins easy for me.
Fitz, quarterback, Geno or Kirk?
I've got Geno ranked 1 spot higher. He is leading the NFL in passing yardage right now, and I think he's going to feast in this one. Falcons rank 30th in pressure rate right now, so he's going to have time to find DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Tyler Lockett.
Those are QB 10 and QB 12 in ECR for the record. At running back, these guys are both obviously starts, but just because they're very close to each other, I wanted to ask Bijan Robinson or Kenneth Walker, who's going to have the bigger week, Debra?
I think it's going to be massive Kenneth Walker game, and that's kind of why I'm a little bit lower on Geno, only because I think Kenneth Walker is going off in this game. Atlanta cannot stop the run. 8th most rushing yards per game, 10th highest missed tackle rate. They're top 6 in success rates to both gap and zone runs. Like, you want to see the monster blow-up game for Kenneth Walker where he gets like 100 rushing yards and 2 scores? This is it.
This is RB4 and RB5. Fitz, who do you prefer?
I also have them RB4 and RB5, and I have Bijan ranked higher. I mean, Debro's talking about how bad the Atlanta run defense has been and how bad the Seattle pass defense has been lately. The Seahawks have been getting smoked by running backs the last couple of weeks. The Giants rookie, Tyrone Tracy, 18 carries for 129 yards in that Giants upset in Seattle. And then last week, we saw the 49ers trio of backups, Jordan Mason, Isaac Guerrero, and Patrick Taylor, 24 carries for 188 yards combined against the Seahawks last week. Seattle's giving up 124.5 rushing yards per game to running backs and 5.2 yards per carry. Bijan's going to have a big day, and maybe Tyler Algier might be flex worthy too.
Yeah, it's a good call.
Ranked close together at wide receiver, Drake London and DK Metcalf. Debra, who do you prefer here? And I'm pretty sure based on your history, I know who the answer is going to be.
It's London time, baby, all the time. I mean, we got stuff out on the old social medias that London is playing the Puka Nacua role, which we've all seen come to fruition, and it's been beautiful. There's no way I'm not taking Drake London here. He's going to get so many freaking targets this week. It's going to be awesome.
Fitz, Drake London is wide receiver 7. DK Metcalf is wide receiver 8. Who do you prefer?
Again, with all of these, one spot of separation in my rankings, but London calling. London has double-digit targets in 3 straight games. He's had at least 6 catches in 5 straight games and 4 touchdowns in his last 5 games. The trends are very pro-London here.
It's so beautiful to hear.
Last one for this game, Darnell Mooney. He's wide receiver 23. JSN, Jackson Smith-Njigba, wide receiver 26. So finally a bit of separation, but still really close in ECR. Debra, who do you prefer this week, Mooney or JSN?
I'm going to go Mooney. Looking at his role in the Atlanta passing attack, he owns the deep role. And while the coverage shell matchup isn't really in his favor, I've got him one spot ahead of JSN at wide receiver 27 and JSN wide receiver 28. I think that he could pop off a big play this week.
Who do you like, Fitz?
Yet again, one spot of separation in my rankings with all 4 of these, Worm. I've got Mooney over JSN. It's just JSN had 117 yards against the Patriots back in week 2. He hasn't had more than 53 yards in any other game, and he has 1 touchdown this season. He's just been disappointing.
Who do you guys like to win this game? Because obviously, as we laid out, like the respective players at each respective position are all ranked so closely, so these teams are fairly similar. Atlanta is laying a field goal at home. Fitz, do you have like a lean on that game?
I am probably not going to put my own money on it because I think it does look like it's going to come down to the final possession. In pools where I am required to make a pick against the spread, I took Seattle and the points, the 2.5 or 3 or whatever it is.
Debra, what do you think?
I'm taking Atlanta, but for me, if I wanted to play this anyway in the betting market, I would just hit the over. And Fitzy's brought this up before, like betting totals over 50 is not really something we like to do. There's just too many outs to failure, but both of these defenses are struggling. Both of these offenses have top 5 neutral pace. The play volume, the scoring potential, that's the way that I would bet this. I would bet the over, and there's not many totals that are this high that I'm looking to bet the over on, but this is one
I think
it's good.
Yeah, sorry. I was just going to say, I believe they are I can't remember who's number 2 and who's number 3, but they're number 2 and 3 in seconds between snaps. So yeah, they play at a breakneck pace. It's going to be a really fun game. Fun week 7 slate overall. We're kind of getting the bad games out of the way early on Thursday night and the London game on Sunday morning. Yeah. But then after that, I mean, Packers, Texans, Lions-Vikings, Falcons, Seattle. Even Jets-Seattle is going to be kind of fun with Davante Adams returning to the Jets and see what Russell Wilson brings to the Steelers. So, I'm excited about week 7.
Fitz, that is exactly what I was going to say. And then I, let you go first and you took my point exactly, which is that this game is really fun, Falcons, Seahawks. And yet it's like 4th on the list of games I'm looking forward to this weekend because the Sunday slate is so awesome. So I totally agree. There are some really high level matchups here. We're about to jump into another high level matchup here. Arguably the best on the slate. This is what I'm most looking forward to, actually, just because of the quarterbacks. Texans at Packers. I mean, CJ Stroud versus Jordan Love. There's a lot of talk over the offseason about how similar these guys were. Obviously, a couple years apart in the draft, but just last year was the year that, okay, these guys are 2 of the future superstar quarterbacks in the league. I heard some podcasts in the offseason say that the Packers were kind of the NFC Texans and vice versa. So it's really intriguing to see them go head to head. The box score numbers haven't always been there for Stroud this year, but if you watch the games, it's so clear he's one of the 5 best quarterbacks in football. Jordan Love obviously missed some time. It's just a super fun matchup of 2 current and future stars at quarterback. Love has been better for fantasy purposes in 2024. The Texans defense is really good though, particularly getting pressure. So who is the better game this week? Stroud and the Texans offense or Love and the Packers offense? Fitz, I'll start with you.
I have to be a shameless homer and go with Jordan Love. It might be closer if Nico Collins weren't on IR for the Texans, but for what it's worth, I went on DraftKings to see what the statistical expectations sort of are for these 2 quarterbacks. Stroud actually has the higher yardage prop number as of Thursday night, 257.5 yards. Love's number 249.5. But for touchdowns, the over-under for both guys was 1.5 TD passes. But for Stroud, it's minus 105 to play the over. And for Love, it's minus 175 to play the over. So the odds suggest that multiple touchdowns are expected for Jordan Love. but not really for CJ Stroud. More of a 50-50 there.
It's kind of hilarious, Fitz, that one of these teams is 5-1 and one of them is 4-2, and they're two of the most fun offenses to watch, two of the best quarterbacks, and yet one of these teams is in first place in their division and the other one's in last place in their division. It is remarkable how deep and strong the NFC North is.
Well, they are 1, 2, 3, and 4 in point differential. All the teams in the NFC North. That's wild.
I can't remember ever seeing that. I'm sure somebody out there has the stat on if we've actually seen it before. I certainly can't think of it. It's really impressive. If you look at on the NFL's kind of stats page, you could look at net touchdowns on the season. Every other division has at least one team in the negatives, obviously, whereas the worst in the NFC North, again, the Packers, is still a net 3 touchdowns up on the season. It's insane. Debra, what are you expecting out of this one? Do you think this is a matchup that lines up better for Stroud and the Texans or Love and the Packers?
I'm taking Jordan Love here. I mean, he has been lights out, man. Top 3 QB in 2 of the last 3 games. I mean, he's basically automatic. I mean, he doesn't have a game on his 2024 ledger where he's thrown less than 2 passing touchdowns. So
that's kind of what he did last season too. Like once the season got going, man, he was just throwing touchdowns all the time.
He is freaking awesome. He's QB3 right now. So as much as I love CJ Stroud, the out for Stroud to come away with a lesser fantasy day here, still play incredibly well, but come away with a lesser fantasy day. When Houston has been able to run the ball this year, they are going to run the ball. And this is, again, it's tried and true. It's every single year. The Packers are an awesome team, but they can't stop the run. So if Houston's able to feed Joe Mixon and he can get going, that's the differentiating factor for me with these 2 different quarterbacks. Green Bay gets in the red zone. It's Love time. He's throwing passing touchdowns. Josh Jacobs, good luck. But Houston, when they get there, man, it's feed Joe Mixon. So I'm going to go Jordan Love here.
Last year, between week 3 and week 9, Jordan Love only threw multiple touchdowns once between week 3 and week 9. The rest of the season, so weeks 1 and 2, and then weeks 10 on, he only didn't throw multiple touchdowns once. He had 2 or 3 touchdowns in all but one game the entire rest of the season, outside of that month and a half stretch in the middle. So that is what he was doing last year. And to your point, it's what he's doing again this year. This roller coaster of an NFL season is moving right along, and it promises to be a month full of tricks, treats, and of course, touchdowns. And DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, is the #1 place to bet touchdowns, running it in from the 1 or an 80-yard bomb. We don't care how they score touchdowns. We just want to bet on them. DraftKings heard us and is delivering. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like a player to score a touchdown. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. The Sunday slate, as we mentioned already in week 7, looks awesome. We got Chiefs-Niners in the late window, of course, Super Bowl rematch. San Francisco's laying 1.5 at home. The early window looks even better. Epic NFC North battle between Detroit and Minnesota. The Vikings are laying 1.5. Also, Texans-Packers, like we just talked about. Jordan Love is laying a field goal against Stroud. Those lines and odds are subject to change, but wherever they land, this slate looks incredible. Here's a reason for new customers to do a touchdown dance of their own. Bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code FantasyPros. That's code FantasyPros for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. All right, guys, let's get into one of those awesome matchups. Lions-Vikings. Detroit's offense is rolling, but so is Minnesota's defense prior to their bye week. Who comes out on top in this matchup? The very fun Lions offense or the chaotic Vikings defense? Debra, I'll start with you.
I think it's going to be the Lions, and I think this all comes down to one particular point. And we know that Brian Flores is going to blitz the ever-loving heck out of Jared Goff. Quietly, Jared Goff has been the best quarterback in the NFL, or at least top 3 versus the blitz. Like, he's 13th in passing grade, 6th in big time throw rate. He leads the NFL in yards per attempt versus the blitz. Ipso facto, this is going to be a huge Jameson Williams game. If Jared Goff can perform well versus the blitz, JMO's numbers, I put this out on social media last night, like, he has a 25% target share. He has 4.7 yards per route run when Jared Goff is blitzed. He's the #1 option when Goff is blitzed. He's going to get blitzed. If Goff can perform well versus the blitz, Detroit's winning this game.
Do you see it the same way, Fitz?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say the Lions. This game does profile as a shootout. I think we're going to see points. It's such a fun matchup. The Vikings gave up 465 yards of offense to the Packers, 396 yards of offense to the 49ers. Now, granted, both the Packers and 49ers fell into holes against the Vikings, so kind of had to stomp the accelerator a little bit and juice up the game script. But good offenses can move the ball on Minnesota. The key for the Vikings has been forcing turnovers. They've forced 13 turnovers in 5 games and at least 2 in every game. And it seems like Andrew Van Ginkel, my favorite defensive player in the NFL, forces all of them. He is just a maniac. But yeah, like if the Lions can limit the mistakes and Flores, to Debro's point, like Flores forces those mistakes by dialing up pressure and bringing it in unexpected ways. Like you never know who's coming for the Vikings on the pass rush, which makes it really hard to be a quarterback against them. Like that, this is the team I would least want to face in the NFL if I was an opposing quarterback. But yeah, I think the Lions are going to move the ball. And to Debro's point, like if the Lions can neutralize the blitz and they do have a really good offensive line, I think Goff is going to do some business.
I know this question was built around Lions offense versus Vikings defense, but you did mention a shootout, Fitz. Do you think that we're going to see, Sam Darnold and company do pretty well against the Lions defense, now missing Aiden Hutchinson?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like the Lions I'm going to be interested to see the residual effect of the Hutchinson injury. Not only like does that make the Lions a less daunting defensive matchup when you're considering start sit in fantasy, but I think it's going to change the outlook for some of the Lions themselves. Like Goff has averaged 23 and a half pass attempts in the Lions' 4 wins. Like they've had some squash jobs so far this season. I don't think that's going to happen as much. I think we're going to see more shootouts, which is probably good for Goff, Amon-Ra, Laporta, Jahmyr Gibbs, maybe not as good for David Montgomery, who's been getting a steady like 15 carries a game as Ben Johnson just keeps dialing up running plays and grinding it out in these close or not close games. Now, when we get close games, like I think that might hurt Monty a little bit, but help everyone in the Detroit passing game.
I really want to see one particular move. We saw the flurry of trades here. I just want to sneak this in here. Dude, tell me there is not a more Detroit Dan Campbell player than freaking Max Crosby. I want him to become a Detroit Lion so bad. I can taste it. Like he would be awesome in Detroit.
What about Hassan Reddick? Why is he not there right now?
Dude, what I mean, Hassan Reddick just seems like, does he want to play football at this point? Like your agent fires you because you can't come to terms with any type of contract? Like at some point, man, like you just got to like, look, like even Jamar Chase, all these wide receivers said like at some point, let's go play ball and then figure out the money later.
Yeah, I'm not sure if a guy who's intentionally not playing football right now is somebody that is in, Dan Campbell's good graces. But,
yeah, good point.
But yeah, the Max Crosby, like, well, on the field, both of them would fit, but like, yeah, off the field too, like Max Crosby, just so clearly.
Max Crosby just screams a Dan Campbell player. Like Dan Campbell would like walk in there and be like, okay, we're building a monument to you day 2.
Next game here, Dolphins-Colts. Maybe not the most like exhilarating game in a vacuum, but I just wanted to bring it up because I wanted to ask, like, coming out of the bye, did the Dolphins figure anything out with their week off, or are we still like somewhat afraid of starting their players in fantasy as long as this quarterback situation remains what it is, Fitz?
Man, you would hope the bye week helps get Tyler Huntley acclimated to the Mike McDaniel offense, and now the Dolphins do get this soft matchup against a pretty flawed Colts defense. I want to say that this is the week where we finally get the big play or two we've been waiting for from Tyreek Hill. We know the Colts cornerbacks, not a very good group. So I've got Tyreek Hill ranked inside my top 20 at wide receiver. Just kind of, I've overranked him for weeks and weeks and weeks. I'm not going to stop now. I'm just going to keep playing him and ranking him highly. And I'm optimistic Devon Achane can get it going. I don't know about Jalen Waddle. It seems like he's the guy who really most needs Tua to come back. He hasn't scored a touchdown this year, and he has not reached 50 yards in a game since week 1. It's been really bad for Waddle ever since Tua got hurt.
What do you think, Debra? Where are these guys ranked for you roughly this week?
I've got a big disparity between Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Like I've got Jalen Waddle all the way down at wide receiver 41. I've got Tyreek Hill at wide receiver 22. I think this is a get right matchup for specifically the Dolphins ground game. Tyler Huntley is Tyler Huntley, but can he just feed a few decent catchable targets to Tyreek Hill and he takes 1 or 2 to the house? I think this is the get right game for their ground game, though. Devon Achane, this offensive line has been playing pretty bad, but this is the get right matchup for basically any running game in the NFL. If you got a problem running the ball, meet the Indianapolis Colts. They don't like to stop the run.
Let's look at another, maybe not most exciting matchup on paper, but that has an interesting question surrounding it. Raiders-Rams. Who steps up for the Raiders offense the rest of the season without Davante Adams? I mean, the most common kind of answer you see on social media throughout the week is Brock Bowers. Is there a receiver that we think steps up as well? Does this elevate Bowers into like borderline, like tight end 1 overall status? I mean, he might already have been there anyway. Fitz, what do you make of the Raiders offense sans Davante Adams?
Well, obviously, we're in the all-you-can-eat target buffet for Brock Bowers. I mean, it's just 3 targets at the omelet station, 2 targets at the salad bar. You get the idea. Like, there are going to be targets galore for Bowers. But maybe there's some residual benefit for Jakobi Meyers. Like, I just don't know if Jakobi Meyers is the kind of guy who's going to turn into like Amon-Ra St. Brown as far as usage. I don't know if we get like a consistent diet of double-digit targets, but probably 8 or 9 a game for Jakobi. So I think it at least makes him like a solid wide receiver 3 type the rest of the season. And maybe it makes Trey Tucker at least like worthy of flex consideration, depending on matchup. And the matchup's pretty good this week against the Rams, who are giving up a league high 9.0 yards per pass attempt.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned like the particular matchup this week, because I guess there's sort of 2 parts to the question. One is who steps up in this matchup in particular, and the other is kind of rest of season. Debra, how do you see that playing out?
In this matchup, I don't think Jakobi Meyers plays, so I think it's going to have to be all Brock Bowers, and that's basically it. I don't have a lot of faith in Trey Tucker, but I've got a lot of faith in Jakobi Meyers. If he can come back healthy, I mean, the 2 games before he missed last week due to injury, 9 targets, 10 targets. And these were tough matchups. I mean, going against the Cleveland Browns, going against the Denver Broncos. Since week 4, he has had a 31% target share, 34% first read share. So he is getting all the volume he can freaking handle. Yeah, I think Fitzy hit this perfectly. I think Jakobi Meyers rest of the season should be valued as a wide receiver 3. If you can get him tossed into a trade specifically because he missed last week, he probably misses this week, I would be trying to get him added on to any kind of deal. And if he's out on the freaking waiver wire, 15% minimum.
Do you guys remember in our rookie draft this year in our Work Dynasty League when I got Bowers at the 110? That was fun.
I do. I'm still waiting on trade offers for Trey Benson. My inbox is gathering dust.
Those will not be coming. But yeah, you guys both had chances to take Bowers and you both passed. And I got
whoa, hold on. I was not sitting down there 108, 109.
But you had picks before then.
101. I wasn't taking Brock Bowers at 101.
I don't remember in that rookie draft if I had a first this year.
You did, and here's how I remember it is. So I had a bunch of picks in that draft. I know nobody cares about this, but I had a bunch of picks. I had like the 1 or 4, and then I had the 7, 8, and 10. And so at 8, I was, and you had 9, D-Bro. So at 8, I was like, well, D-Bro has good tight ends already, and he loves Jonathan Brooks. So if I take Bowers here, what I would have done, then D-Bro is going to take Brooks. But if I take Brooks here, D-Bro's not going to take Bowers, and he'll slide to me to the 110.
Because here's the context. In that league, I have Dalton Kincaid and Sam Laporta. So why the hell was I going to draft Brock Bowers?
Because Bowers is maybe now tight end 1 in Dynasty, arguably.
Fair, but still.
Where is, by the way, to something that people actually care about, where would you guys rank Bowers the rest of season now amongst tight ends? Like, I know.
Tight end 2.
Tight end 2, okay. Fitz,
behind only Travis Kelce for me.
Fitz, you've been like higher than anybody on Bowers, like in terms of redraft. Everybody was higher on him in Dynasty, but you were all in on him even in redraft this year relative to consensus. Where do you see him now rest of season?
I have him 3 behind Kittle and Kelce, but man, it is hard to parse those 3. I think they're all really close.
Yep.
When I think about my favorite fall activities, there are plenty of fun adventures on the list. Right at the top every fall is going to football games live. Some of my all-time favorite memories watching the Ravens have come right inside M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore, cheering along with thousands of fellow Ravens fans in primetime. And I'll be checking off another NFL stadium from my list later this month, actually in just like a week and a half, when the Ravens head to Cleveland. I'll be going to that game along with a handful of our Fantasy Pros colleagues. Can't wait to see everybody in person. And when we order our tickets, you know we used Game Time. They've got a great new feature called Game Time Picks, which filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats. It makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. The list of my favorite features on the Game Time app is too long to read everything, but there are some standouts for me personally. I love the Game Time Picks curation, obviously, especially since I can use it for not just sports, but concerts, comedy, theater, and more. I also love the all-in pricing, so there are no surprise fees at checkout. There's nothing in the world that is more infuriating to me than thinking I know what I'm about to spend on a purchase, then getting hit with a surprise fee at the last second. That doesn't happen with Game Time. Plus, I also appreciate the seat views to get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you commit to buying. The customer service is excellent as well. Their support team has helped me out on more than one occasion buying last-minute tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code FANTASYPROS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code FANTASYPROS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. All right, guys, let's get into that Super Bowl rematch. A matchup we've seen a couple of times now in recent years. Chiefs at 49ers, a little less juice to this one than maybe in some of the last couple of years, but it still just feels like a cool matchup seeing these two teams go against each other. Kyle Shanahan, Patrick Mahomes, just all the stars in this game. Still looking forward to this one a lot in the late window. Brandon Aiyuk has just one game this season with at least 50 receiving yards. He's only finished inside the top 40 receivers in 1 week on the entire year, yet he's still ranked as wide receiver 17 in our half PPR expert consensus rankings for week 7. So is this the week that he gets going, Fitz?
Yeah, the issue with Aiyuk is that he is just not a target hog. He's a really good player, but even last year when he was a 1,300-yard receiver, he only averaged 6.6 targets a game. Aiyuk has had 2 games with double-digit targets this season, 4 games with 5 or fewer targets, and the 2 games where he had double-digit targets came against the Cardinals and the Rams, 2 of the worst pass defenses in the league. The Chiefs' pass defense not among the worst pass defenses in the league. So I'm below consensus on him at wide receiver 21.
Debro, what do you think? Again, he hasn't been inside the top 40 much of this season, and yet he's ranked inside the top 20 in ECR.
He shouldn't be ranked that high. I'm pulling up my ranking. I'm low on Aiyuk this week. I've got him at wide receiver 25. And honestly, I feel like I need to drop him. Yeah, I'm going to drop him more.
By the way, while you're saying that, he is actually wide receiver 18. It looks like he dropped between when I put together the outline. Still inside the top 20, but he is one spot lower than before.
Wide receiver 29, and I think he should be looked at as a mid to low range wide receiver 3 this week. The coverage shell matchup is terrible for him. I mean, Kansas City's running the second highest rate of too high right now on 67% of their defensive snaps. Aiyuk's numbers against too high. He's always been San Francisco's single high beater. That's the games you see Aiyuk go off in, and I write about this in the primer constantly, is that their splits between too high and single high are massive. So Debo should be their go-to this week. Aiyuk's numbers against too high this year, 15% target share, 1.1 yards per route run. So not good. You need to sit Aiyuk this week.
Fitz, where did you say you have Aiyuk ranked?
21. Wide receiver 21.
So lower than consensus, but not quite as low as Debro. I did want to sneak in a second question on this matchup with a different wide receiver. I just feel like we have to talk about JuJu Smith-Schuster. 7 catches for 130 yards the last time we saw the Chiefs play. Obviously, they're coming off a bye. So are we kind of treating JuJu for the time being as KC's wide receiver 1, or coming out of the bye week, do we think we're going to see rookie wide receiver Xavier Worthy take a larger role in the offense? We do often see that with talented rookies coming off a bye. I've been talking about it all week. That's one of my favorite kind of profiles of players to go after in trades is highly drafted rookies coming out of their bye week. So, Debra, how do you see that playing out? Do you think this is kind of JuJu's receiving room right now, or do you expect to see more out of Worthy?
I expect to see more out of Worthy, and JuJu also popping up with a late week hammy issue. He was limited in practice on Thursday. Doesn't look great for his outlook. I still think as of right now that he plays. But we do still have to take note of that. The difference between JuJu, he walked away last week with a huge box score. But looking at just the minutia of the numbers, an 18% first read share, he wasn't the go-to. It was Kelsey, and actually Xavier Worthy had a 27% first read share. So while the box score didn't look great for Xavier Worthy, when Patrick Mahomes was dropping back, he was actually looking in Worthy's direction more than he was looking for JuJu. JuJu just happened to be open more last week. So I am higher, probably maybe a little bit than consensus about Xavier Worthy and his outlook rest of the season, and maybe a little bit more tepid on JuJu considering the hamstring issue and some of the deeper numbers from last week.
It's a good point on JuJu. I put together this outline before that late week injury popped up. Are they playing tool on FantasyPros.com gives him a 47% chance to play right now. That's one of our new tools. So it is slightly on the pessimistic side of JuJu playing this week, given that late week pop up of the injury. Fitz, what do you think about this one? And maybe you can take a longer term view if we don't expect JuJu to play this week. But kind of how do you see this receiver room panning out for as long as these are the guys they have healthy?
Yeah, the late week injury designation is bad because I'm going to have to pull him out of a lot of lineups because I picked him up pretty much everywhere. I think he's their wide receiver one going forward. I'd rather have him than Xavier Worthy. So JuJu is now in the Rashee Rice role as the short area receiver for Kansas City, and this has been a valuable role. And JuJu actually had it before Rashee Rice came in 2023 and proved to be a big upgrade over JuJu. But in 2022, JuJu had 78 catches for 933 yards. So I think like 78 for 933 is the sort of pace we're going to see for JuJu the rest of the way. And that's about 75% of what Rashee Rice can give you. But 75% of Rashee Rice is still a guy you're starting every week.
Let's go to our next matchup here. Sunday Night Football, Jets at Steelers. This one's pretty obvious. Fitz, will start with you. What are our expectations for the startable Jets players in week one now that Davante Adams is going to be joining them?
Oh, man. Well, Adams is the most interesting case here. And I know on our Start Sit show earlier this week, Worm Erickson was telling us how he thinks Adams is going to get peppered with targets right from the get-go. I'm not as sure about that. Like, I don't know what the usage is going to be. I do tend to think Garrett Wilson is still going to lead the Jets in targets this week, but we'll see. I mean, obviously Adams and Aaron Rodgers have a long and successful history together. I don't know. Like, do we think that the Davante Adams hamstring injury was complete fiction? Because that's kind of the key. If there was something to it, maybe Adams doesn't play a full complement of snaps. But if that was, just a non-injury meant to force a trade, then maybe we see Adams get like in a snap share north of 80%. So that's kind of the key. And, hopefully the good game against the Bills on Monday night gets Breece Hall going. Let me ask you guys about this. What do we think Davante Adams does for Aaron Rodgers in fantasy? Like, is there any chance that with Garrett Wilson and Davante Adams as his top two receivers, like Rodgers could flirt with low-end QB1 value the rest of the way?
I would say yes. I don't know that I would rank him as a low-end QB1, but I think the way you phrase it as flirting with that kind of value, I do think that. I mean, I know that we kind of make fun of it a lot, but like Allen Lazard is not a bad wide receiver 3, especially given his chemistry with Rodgers. And so if he's behind now two guys that can play at a superstar level theoretically, plus passing to Hall and just all of it, like, yeah, I think he's in that range of could very conceivably in any given week finish as a back half QB1. What do you think, D-Bro?
Yeah, I think he's in that long tier of guys like the Jared Goffs, the Kirk Cousins of the world, guys where Caleb Williams lately, guys where we're ranking somewhere between QB 10 and QB 15-ish. So I think he's going to be on the fringe of that in a lot of different weeks, and probably it's going to pretend like the matchup, is it better for the ground game versus the passing game, and kind of like where are we divvying up touchdowns this week? If it's more towards the passing game, then yeah, I can see Rodgers weeks moving forward where we're ranking him as a top 12 quarterback. I think that Adams it's the tide that raises all ships, man. Like
Yeah, let me, like one thing to add. One of the reasons I was not real interested in Aaron Rodgers coming into this season, I thought the Jets defense was going to be so good that like Rodgers just wasn't going to play in many shootouts. Like the Jets would put them in a lot of favorable scripts with their defense, but the Jets defense has not been as good as I thought, which means maybe there's a little more yardage upside for Aaron Rodgers than I thought initially.
Yeah, I think that's definitely, because the thing about the Jets is you don't want to attack their secondary like that, but that's fine. You can run on this defense. Their run defense is not great. So depending on how teams attack them and saying like, look, like, okay, fine, your secondary is really stinking good. Okay, let's avoid the corners. Let's use our tight ends. And let's run the dang ball. People can have success if you have a good enough offensive line against the Jets defense right now, staying away from their secondary. So I don't disagree, Fitzy. And just for the laughs, I do have Davante Adams ranked over Garrett Wilson. I'm kind of in the Erickson bucket here. I think that there's too much rapport here. And basically, if they were walking into a situation, I mean, let's be real here. Other people are calling the plays right now for the Jets. They're still using the Nathaniel Hackett, Aaron Rodgers playbook, which is basically Davante Adams knows for years, and years. So I think this is much more of a seamless kind of transition for Adams and more of a, updated nomenclature for the playbook this year, but still the same old tried and true plays. Like, let's just play the hits this week and go out there and ball Davante.
Garrett Wilson's wide receiver 19 and half PPR, ECR, and Davante Adams wide receiver 27. So there's a bit of a gap there across the industry. Debra, I talked about this a little bit in a show earlier the week, but what I really love is the idea of them using Davante Adams in this week, particular in the red zone. Like I don't know that he's going to get a huge workload overall, but I think when he's on the field, it will be in kind of those high leverage moments. I think when they're near the end zone, and I would not be surprised to see him catch a touchdown. Like I think that's where, if he's going to make an immediate impact, like maybe he was a little banged up with the hamstring, working his way back in. I think that's where they use him. His anytime touchdown odds plus 155. I like quite a bit on DraftKings.
It's plus money.
I'm looking right now.
It was minus. So
I'm looking right now plus 155 on DraftKings. Yep. First touchdown score, which I love too. Rodgers going to want to go to him right away. Plus 800. I love it.
Oh, wow. I'm betting it right now.
I'm already looking forward to seeing an Aaron Rodgers back shoulder throw to Davante Adams again. I've missed that.
I mean, it is an absolute. The only reason they wouldn't go to him, like the absolute first play that they can in the red zone, is if the Steelers like triple team him, because they know it's coming too. Like they're going to. Rodgers wants to force feed the ball to Adams to get him a touchdown.
Especially they're making the move to justify the move and to get, all the good feels rolling like immediately. Yes, I agree with everything. So I'm running to bet this right now. And I do have just two notes. Davante Adams, I have at wide receiver. Where are you at, Davante? Wide receiver 18, and I've got Garrett Wilson at wide receiver 20, as well as Davante is practicing in full all week right now. So I think he's going to be a full go.
Yeah, I expect that as well. Let's go to, there's another doubleheader from Monday Night Football. They are doing a ton of these this year. Ravens-Bucks is one of these games. Two very explosive offenses playing, really well. Tons of fantasy starters in this game. So rather than kind of break down all the matchups, because I think the matchups are all pretty much good across the board, given the offenses and the defenses they're going against. Outside of the running backs facing the Ravens' run defense, pretty much everything else in this game I expect to favor the offensive side of things. So let's just have some fun. I want you guys to predict one player each who will score multiple touchdowns in this one, not including quarterbacks, obviously. Fitz, you can go first. Who is one player in Ravens-Bucks who will score multiple touchdowns this week?
How about the guy who scored multiple touchdowns last week, Chris Godwin? 11 catches for 125 and a pair of TDs against the Saints last Sunday. Godwin has turned into this red zone machine, which is kind of funny. He's already got 5 TDs on the season, which is as many as he had in 2022 and 2023 combined. So let's give Chris Godwin 2 more this week.
Debra, I saw you nodding. Was that your pick, or did you just agree?
Oh, that was the pick that I was going to go with. Also adding in here, Baltimore versus slot wide receivers. They have allowed the 5th most receiving touchdowns to the slot. I was going to go with Godwin here, but also I do want to mention, if you want to go further down the page, I think the really fun pick here is Cade Otton. Baltimore has been having a tough time guarding tight ends this year, giving up the most receiving yards and the 10th most fantasy points. If we were going to go off the page here a little bit and it's not Godwin, I actually really like Cade Otton this week.
Look at the hurt on Worm's face that we didn't pick Derrick Henry.
No, I think it's reasonable to not pick. I'm guessing.
What's his touchdown odds this week? Like minus 300?
I'm sure betting he gets 1, 2. I don't know. They like to get him his 1. I mean, he could easily get 2.
Yeah, but minus 150 to get 2.
I almost kind of wanted to pick somebody like Mark Andrews just to like go completely like, it's has been bad this year.
Cade Otton's not weird enough for you, Worm?
Well, I was going to say, if we're picking Cade Otton, Mark Andrews all of a sudden doesn't seem so weird.
I thought you guys were going to pick Mike Evans, which is what would have been my pick, but I thought it was really, I do think it was fascinating. I'm not hurt by it. I think it's interesting that all three of us, our first instinct were Bucs players, not the team that's favored. So the Ravens, I think, are laying 3.5. Do you guys think that the Bucs cover that then if we're all kind of leaning towards Tampa Bay players to score multiple touchdowns?
Yeah. I mean, I like Baker a lot. I don't know if they cover it, but it's going to be a hell of a game.
No, I bet the Ravens.
Yeah. Well, then which Ravens going to get 2 touchdowns, Fitz?
Yeah, probably Derrick Henry.
Zay Flowers. I think it's Zay Flowers.
The answer could be Zay.
The answer is probably Lamar Jackson, if anybody, other than Derrick Henry.
We've spent way too much time talking about the Ravens now.
We did half the segment of the Bucs. I do think that's an awesome game. Like I think both offenses are going to score a ton. That's going to be a really fun one. So definitely.
Any other Ravens players you want to mention here, Worm? I think we've kind of covered the entire skill position.
Charlie
roster.
Kohler, 2 touchdowns.
All I mentioned was Mark Andrews as a joke and Lamar Jackson as he wasn't eligible, but a serious one.
Tylan Wallace? No. Okay. Sorry. Moving on.
None of the receivers would be actually. You know who the real pick is.
Oh, here we go. I knew it.
The real pick is. Here's the thing about the Ravens. They don't typically do like the one guy outside of Derrick Henry gets all the touchdowns. They spread it around when they get in close. If it is one guy, it's Isaiah Likely, who I don't think that'll happen, but he's probably the guy if we're being real. All right, let's go to Chargers at Cardinals. Before we get into the key question for Monday night's matchup, I want to ask you guys about your Uber Eats Monday night meals of the week. Debra, what must-order food gets you reaching for your Uber Eats app for great game day deals when you think of Arizona, where this game's taking place?
Dude, I'm going to channel my best Ryan Reynolds and my best Deadpool here. It's chimichangas, baby. That's the 101. Come on. This is easy.
You were very excited when we were discussing this to say, oh, chimichangas.
Yeah. I almost wore my Deadpool onesie on this show just because of that. Almost.
Fitz, what do you think of when you think of Arizona?
I keep hearing about how good Pizzeria Bianco is in the Phoenix Scottsdale area, and I've never had it, but I've heard a lot of people say it is just an A+ pizzeria. So I would love to try that.
I don't have a ton of knowledge about Arizona cuisine. The first thing I think of immediately is just I'm sure there's really excellent Mexican food there that I would be happy to dive
Tamales,
into.
Dude. Tamales always.
But when I Googled it, the first thing that popped up of top foods you must eat in Arizona is fry bread, which I don't know what that is, but it's 2 of my favorite things are fried food and bread. So I am all in trying out fry bread the next time I'm there. But yeah, those are the big 2 that were listed when I Googled it. Arizona's known for fry bread and the invention of chimichangas. So Debra already took the other one, but yeah, if anybody knows what fry bread is, drop it in the comments. I mean, I'm sure I could Google it, but it sounds very good to me. There you guys have it. Our Uber Eats Monday night meals of the week. We got fry bread. We got chimichangas. We got the pizza place. Uber Eats has the best game day deals all season long. Order now for game day. Chargers at Cardinals, guys. Last game on the slate. Kind of a pessimistic question to end on. What's wrong with Kyler Murray? I know Kyler is somebody that you've talked about, Debra, a couple of times on the show this season. QB 15 or worse in 4 out of his 6 games played so far in 2024. Is Kyler a starting option in fantasy against what has been a good Chargers defense, or are we getting kind of further and further away of believing in Kyler?
Kyler is a mid-range QB2, and I might actually bump him to a low-range QB2. He is. It's the rushing is saving him, and 2 really good games are saving. When people look at his season-long stuff, it really lies to you. If you have Kyler Murray on any fantasy teams, you already know the pain that I'm about to discuss. He's been arguably, and this honestly was last year too. I talked about this and I was hoping for better returns this year, but he was arguably terrible as a passer last year. And we've seen much of the same this year. 37 qualifying quarterbacks. Kyler Murray, 32nd in yards per attempt, 19th in CPOE. He is 36. There is only one quarterback worse than Kyler Murray as far as highly accurate throw rate. So all I can say, if you're starting Kyler Murray this week, you better hope he runs, because the passing has been woof this year.
So let me ask you this, Debro, before throwing it to Fitz. So I'm in a guillotine league with a couple of our coworkers at work, and I have Kyler Murray as my quarterback. So in a format like that, would you view that situation as, I need to prioritize spending my fab dollars on a different quarterback? Okay, you don't believe that it's going to kind of come together later in the season? Okay.
Nope. Right. You need to get a quarterback that's actually hashtag good, because it ain't Kyler.
Fitz, what do you make of Kyler? Is there kind of anything you can identify that's been going wrong for him this year? What do you expect for the rest of the season? How are you evaluating the situation? And also, in terms of the matchup against the Chargers?
Guillotine is probably the worst format for Kyler, because he is wildly inconsistent, and that is just a hallmark of Kyler, and it always has been. Like, I've had Kyler in a couple of dynasty leagues, and if you follow him and maybe you're not watching the game, you'll see at halftime he's got 4 fantasy points, and you're like, what's going on with Kyler? And then all of a sudden by the end of the day, I'll have 24 fantasy points. He is just game to game, half to half, wildly inconsistent. Debro is right. He is not a very good pure passer, and he's not really a consistent runner. He's not the sort of guy who just delivers the goods with rushing week in, week out like Lamar Jackson. Just not that kind of guy. So, yeah, I mean, it feels like the numbers should be better, because by most metrics, the protection has been okay for Kyler, and he's got pretty decent weaponry now with Marvin Harrison Jr. Granted, missed most of the Packers game last week with the concussion, Trey McBride. But yeah, that Debro mentioned it. Kyler has averaged 6.7 yards or fewer per pass attempt against every team he's played this season, against the Rams, who have one of the worst pass defenses in the league. Even against the Commanders, he didn't play all that well. So it hasn't been catastrophic, though. He's had a couple of bangers, a couple of games with 20 plus points, and everyone was ready to dump on him 2 weeks ago, and he played the 49ers and wound up having a really good day. So, man, in some ways, you almost have to just leave him in there and know there are going to be some bad weeks and good weeks, and it's not even predictable based on opponents sometimes.
Yeah. Debra, I saw you mention in the chat here, 2 games under 15 rushing yards this year. That's just not what you think of with Kyler.
No. By the way, I've got him ranked as a low end QB1. I'm just kind of that's my assessment of him. He is a low end QB1, and I'm just sticking him there every week. And I know I'm going to be way too low some weeks and way too high other weeks.
I'll throw this out there for people. This week, I would play Trevor Lawrence over Kyler Murray. This week, I would play Anthony Richardson over Kyler Murray. I have no faith in Kyler Murray.
I can get on with A-Rich, but I cannot get down with Trevor Lawrence.
The New England Patriots are a pass funnel. That's what I'm leaning into.
Do you guys like that we're still having these double headers on Monday night, this deep into the season now?
Yeah. I love it for DFS purposes. It's wonderful. I love 2 gamers.
As long as one's kind of a lousy game that I can just sort of check in on during commercials and not feel like I'm missing anything, I'm okay with it.
I feel like these could be 2 good games. There's a world where doesn't play out that way, but again, I think Ravens-Bucks is gonna be really explosive. Chargers-Cardinals, if Kyler is playing well and J.K. Dobbins is running all over the field, that could be a fun one too. So I think
it's gonna be a fun week if you're a Chargers fan. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I do think the Chargers are gonna win, but we'll see how it plays out. We'll wrap up there. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Best of luck in week 7 with all of your lineup decisions. You can head to Discord and ask us plenty of more questions if you want. Debro and Fitz are on there pretty much all weekend long, so be sure to check that out. For Fitz and Debro, I'm Ryan Wormeli. Thank you everybody for tuning in. We'll see you again next week.